Settlement with JPMorgan, it cancels the swap termination fees. It gives the county $50 million, but the county is still left with the variable rate demand warrants and auction rate securities that were sold as part of this package, which have since blown up and resulted in these exorbitant interest rates. Does this agreement really make the county whole?
No, it does not. And it does not preclude the county from future actions if necessary. There's nothing in there that restricts us. In other words, this is just in my layman's terms, but as I understand it, does not take JPMorgan off the hook with all of this. So, it seems to me that the important thing about this that you need to emphasize is that it has been decided by this trial, if you will, that securities violations occurred. That's very significant. That JPMorgan did, in fact, violate security laws. So,
although JPMorgan did not admit that.
Well, admit it or not, they paid up. So, I think, again, we're represented by attorneys on this, and I'm just giving you my opinion based on what I've learned from them. But there's nowhere in there does it say that it bars future action by this commission.
This settlement with JPMorgan, do you think it makes the county whole, or has JPMorgan done its part yet?
Absolutely not. It does not make us whole. And if y'all got my press release yesterday, I still think the only solution to our sewer mess is a Chapter 9 bankruptcy. $50 million is not even a ripple in the pond on a $3 billion debt. And it's very obvious now with the Larry Langford conviction, the guilty admissions of LaPierre and Blunt, the HDR holdings that have been indicted in New York, and everything else that we found out in the last couple of months, that this whole process has been tainted, it's been corrupt, people have made money off of it that didn't do a bit of work, and I don't see any reason why we even should think about making these people whole when we can see all the corruption and wrongdoing that's been done through the whole process. I still think we need to have a cram down of get our debt down to about $1.2 to $1.3 billion, and that way the current sewer revenues will pay the bonds, and we won't have to worry about rate increases and unreasonable charges being passed on to the ratepayers.
And you think the only way to get that crammed down will be bankruptcy?
Either through an agreed upon bankruptcy or a forced bankruptcy. I mean, either way, if you did the cram down, I think it would have to be done through bankruptcy court. Now, you can go into bankruptcy court with all sides agreeing, and everybody goes to the judge and say, we all agree on this, and he'll gavel it and say that's fine. Or we can go and make it a forced bankruptcy. But I don't think any other solution can be worked out with current sewer revenues, or without finding new taxes or new fees and everything, which I'm not willing to go for.
JPMorgan, you saw the settlement. What should happen next resolving this? Now, two county commissioners, apparently Humphryes and Carns, they want to move it to, and you would agree, moving it down to $1.2 billion, you can pay that, but they're keeping bankruptcy on the table. For you, you seem like that's still not an option.
I think back to the early part of the summer. If we had bankrupt, where would we have been with the county? Because we couldn't just bankrupt the sewer debt. We would have had to bankrupt the entire county. And had we made that move at that time, we would have devastated the county finances. And now that we have some breathing room, I think we still need to go back and look at our legal options as it relates to JPMorgan and their admissions. I do know that there's some activity looking at filing lawsuits. I'm somewhat concerned about the scope of the lawsuit that we're anticipating on filing. But I think we should hold JPMorgan and the other banks that were involved to try to ease the burden on the county. We should hold them accountable.
When you mention scope, are you talking, is it too big, or because it seems like a ton of money?
I'll just leave it at that point.
Okay. Do you believe there's serious talks about that option up there?
Yes.
Serious talks among county commissioners, serious talks where?
Serious talks among county commissioners, as well as our legal team that's still interacting with JPMorgan and the other bank.
Commissioner, I want to pick up on something Cal mentioned about JPMorgan legally. Over the past 2 weeks, you've had the CDR indictment in New York, you had the Langford trial, testimony from Blunt and LaPierre, and you've had the SEC settlement. Isn't there a preponderance of evidence that there was illegal activity on the behalf of JPMorgan against Jefferson County? And can't that evidence be used to file some criminal or civil action against them?
Yes.
What are you waiting for?
I'm not waiting. So
Who has to make that decision?
the whole commission will have to make that decision, and that's just something that has to be done in the proper mode at the proper time. And you remember last Wednesdays when this whole thing broke loose, so we're still kind of catching our breath. But I wanted to do it before last Wednesday. I was ready and thought that was a leverage point we could have. We certainly, that leverage bar, instead of a 2-foot leverage bar, we got a 6-foot leverage bar now, in my opinion. So,
Will it be done?
in my opinion, yes.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Have you talked to other commissioners about this? I haven't
talked to that I remember, but I know enough to know that I feel like it needs to be done, and I think justice will be served somewhere in this process for the county.
What do you mean you can't remember?
Can't you remember? I have a hard time remembering things.
You a guy who remember Alabama football scores from 1952.
You're right.
And you can't remember a conversation last week with a commissioner.
He said commissioners.
Oh, Kyle, you want to rephrase your question?
Have you had a discussion with a commissioner about this?
Yes.
Here you go.